Right, so in today's video, I'm going to be going over the Airbnb business in more detail and go over how passive you can make it be. To me, building a business is all about making it as passive as possible. You don't want to create another job for yourself, and that's one thing I'm really adamant on, and that's one thing I do teach a lot, is you want to build a business so it can run without you and not so it's solely dependent on you. So first, you've got to understand the two aspects to it. So you've got passive income and you've got active income. Active income is where you're making your money through your job, through doing the work, and passive income is making sure money does all the work for you. So how do you actually get to the point of making your Airbnb business passive? So we're gonna literally just write it all down in the most basic terms possible. This is going to be just completely winging it just from the stuff we know, stuff we've implemented in our business, because the current point we're at is we've scaled to, got 85 units, I believe, right now. We're doing over 200k a month consistently in bookings. We do about 30 to 40k a month in management fees. In our rent-to-rent business, we do 10k a month. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I only do the highest ROI stuff in the business. I just oversee the finances. I just make sure the operations manager's doing her role. I'm just making sure things are moving in the right direction. I physically don't have to do too much with the business anymore, and that's the way you want to design it. So what are the key steps to making a passive income business? So first off, you've got to decide of what is it you want to achieve out of this. If you're looking to start an Airbnb business to get a couple of units and then go off into the sunset, it's going to be a bit hard to make it as passive because more things will come up and it'll be more reliant on you. However, the moment you start to scale is the moment you can start to hire and buy back your time. So what do I mean by that is, if you were to take on a rent-to-rent property, you can expect to make anywhere between £800 to £2,000 a month. If you scale to 3 or 4 of them, so you got, let's just say it's 1,500 times 4, that gives you £6,000. If you was making £6,000 a month from rent-to-rent properties, you are laughing. You are in a very unique spot. You're in a good spot to start to scale your business and start to buy back your time. So if you've only got a couple of units, you're going to really struggle to buy back your time. So the only reason I say that is it's going to come down to you hiring and making sure you've got the right systems in place. So what do I mean by that is, you've got to take yourself out of the business from doing the day-to-day stuff to think, how do you actually work on the business? You've got to then pick the slots, pick the pockets, and then try to make things work without you. So what do I mean by that? If you get to these amount of units, so if you get to 4 rent-to-rent and you're making £6,000 a month, how do you see this as a resource to buy back your time? Don't look at this £6,000 of this is what's going into your pocket. You want to see, how do I really buy back my time so you don't actually have to do much? And that comes down to systems and people. So there's going to be a few different key pillars in the Airbnb business that's going to help you function sort of as an Airbnb manager, or help when it comes to hiring staff. So you've got your operations, which is going to be your task management. You're also going to include other stuff in there, such as your cleaning softwares, which is obviously how do we schedule cleaners to go and do the properties? How do we then do the pricing? How do we make sure the staff are on what they need to be on? So when it comes down to the systems, we'll break it down into a bit more detail on why and what's so important and how you can really scale it. So first, you've got your channel manager. You might think, what's a channel manager? This is just a software that integrates all the different booking platforms you can advertise on. So this is like your Airbnb, your Booking.com, your Vrbo, Google, Expedia, all the online travel agents except from the corporate travel agents. So your channel manager basically syncs your booking calendars up across all the platforms and stops any cancellations. So if someone decides they're booking through Airbnb on the 29th of December, what this does is it blocks the calendar out on the channel manager, so no one can book on Booking.com, no one can book on Vrbo, no one can book on any of these platforms on this date. Because what it does is it syncs them all together, so you don't actually have to physically do that. That's step number 1 to buying back your time. That's step number 1 to making it passive. Because the amount of hosts I've spoken to in the past who don't have a channel manager, they get a booking in Airbnb, they have to manually go into Booking.com to block out the calendar, they have to manually go into Vrbo to block out the calendar. It's not accessible. It's not how you can operate this at scale. It'll become too much inefficiencies. It's too reliant on human behavior. It's just going to mess up completely. It just doesn't work. Next, you might think, how else do we use the channel manager to buy back our time? So again, you want to think of it in terms of the actual guest journey. So what I mean by that is, from the moment the guest books your property, to the moment the guest checks in, to the care they get during their stay, and to the post-booking process. So what do I mean by that is, you can set up AI automations in your channel manager. So the moment someone books your property, So the moment someone books your property, you can have AI automation set up, which helps with the start of the booking process, which will say, here's the stuff you need prior to your stay. Then you can set up automations to say, on the day before check-in, here's a reminder message. Then you could do something on the day of check-in, which is, here's what you need to do in order to receive the check-in instructions. And what we have in our channel manager, and I'll break this down, is we have our ID collections, rental agreement, and we have our deposits. So one thing you can do before people are staying is, on our channel manager, we can set rules and filters. So what it means is, we do not release check-in instructions to our guests until we've collected deposits, until the rental agreement's been signed, and until we've received their ID. The moment we receive all three of those, our channel manager sees that as a success, then it automatically releases the check-in instructions 24 hours before arrival. And it also does that for any last minute stays as well. That's the next step to automate your business. Now picture this, if I've got 85 units, this automatically does it for me. All of my staff have to do in the morning is just double check that all these people who are checking in, whether it's 20 or 30 people checking in a day, that these have all been completed. Any that are not, I already have AI automation reminders, dropping them another message to say, please do this prior to releasing your check-in instructions. Again, this buys back your time, because then as you continue to scale, and as you continue to think, well, if I do really want to make this business passive, and I do really want to grow myself to the point where I can go to Dubai, I can go to Bali, I can go to Thailand and travel, that my work's being done for me in the background. This is all about, how do you buy back your time and put systems and processes in place so you don't actually have to do too much. I genuinely don't do too much in the day-to-day operations of the business. All Kieran does is do the ads for the business, does SEO, and we do content like this, which is just driving landlords to our page and driving people wanting to learn about Airbnb. This is where our time should be spent, because it's the highest ROI stuff to the business. And the moment you get in the mindset of, you should only be doing the highest ROI stuff, is the moment it will change your perspective on business. Me doing guest communications, making sure I'm doing this, I'm sending this out manually, I'm sending this out manually, I'm making sure this has been done, is not really benefiting us as a business, and it's only being selfish. I'm being really selfish at a business by doing low value tasks and not focusing on the highest ROI stuff, which is going to ultimately drive the business forward. So again, channel managers are really good, because that's one way to really buy back your time. Next, we've got dynamic pricing. So there's a few different softwares you can use for this. We use Price Labs, but I know there's another one which is Wheelhouse. So you might think, what is dynamic pricing? A lot of you may know, it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, it's just dynamic pricing. So let's just say, for example, Taylor Swift, or I don't know, Drake is playing at a concert in Manchester next week in the Co-op Arena or AO Arena. What this does is, it just meets the demand. So basically, because there's going to be events on a certain date, it basically just drives the pricing through the roof. It also knows if there's regeneration schemes going on. It just knows if there's more demand in certain areas. This is what hotels use, and this is ultimately how you can stay on top of your pricing. So this is one way to really make your business passive, is you can set different settings and filters within your business. So when you're starting an Airbnb business, you've got to really decide on who is your ICP. So what I mean by that is, who are you targeting to stay at your properties? If you're staying in Manchester and you're getting Manchester properties, it's going to be more leisure stays. If you're going into somewhere like, I'll give you an example, like the Northeast, they're investing £10 billion into AI centres. What does that mean? We're going to get contractors here, and in Manchester, we're going to get leisure people here. So within Price Labs, what you can do is you can set like minimum night settings. So for us in Manchester, we have 2 nights pretty much across the board. Anything after, I think it's 3 months, we do minimum 3 nights, minimum 4 nights, because that's most of the market in Airbnb and within the Manchester realm. However, if I'm going northeast, where it's mainly regeneration schemes, mainly contractors, people who are going Monday through to Friday, these projects going on at a couple of times, whether that be 3, 6 months, I'm setting higher nightly minimums. I could do minimum nights of 5 nights. I could then set my price on the base price as what this suggests as well. So how do you really buy back your time with this? If you've got 20 units, you don't know what the price should be per property. You might set it as 90 quid a night, but what does 90 quid per night do? You might be underpricing yourself in the market, you might be overpricing yourself, you might not know what is your ICP and what area you're focusing on, so you don't even know if you're hitting the right criteria for what you need in order to get your property bought. Dynamic pricing will help you choose a base price. It will show you just all the market, what's going on at the moment. So it might even say to you, your base price, but it might say your base price equals, it should be 130 quid a night. So dynamic pricing does this all for you. So what I mean by base price is this is like the average nightly rate across the year, how it pretty much works. So across your weekdays and your weekends, this is what it suggests. So what happens is normally during the weekdays, it might drop to, I don't know, 100 quid. Then on the weekends, it might be like 170, for example. That's your base price, it sets it as that. Not only that, it shows you key metrics. So you can see the next 7, the next 30, the next 60 nights. What it might tell you is you're way above market in terms of pricing. So what that means is you need to drop your rate. Because if your property is not getting booked out, maybe your pricing is too much. But the moment you start to understand how dynamic pricing works and really get a feel for these softwares, the moment you can make it really passive. Once you understand your market, how to operate proper as a short-term rental host, because you're not just an Airbnb host, you're a short-term rental host. You can do short lets, medium lets, long lets. The moment you understand your market, how the pricing works, all you need to do is check this once a week. You could hire a VA to then, you've got key criteria you need to manage, and you just need to drop it and go up every week on a Friday. That's what I used to do. I don't do it anymore. I've got a pricing person who works fully remote for us, but this is the next step to buying back your time. Instead of you manually doing pricing, trying to see what events are going in the area, dynamic pricing does it all for you. With a click of a button, you go there, it tells you whether you're way above market by checking the base price or whether you're way below, and you can check your occupancy trends as well. If you're sitting there going into the next 30 nights and it says you're like blue, which means you're way above market, you're probably underpriced. You can probably put that up to, I don't know, 140. Put it up 10%. Then if it starts to drop down and you go within the green, that means, right, you might be perfectly fine. Then if you put it up a bit more and you go towards the yellow and red, which means you're below market, then you come drastically below market, you just drop your rates again. I do this every week, but because you don't have to manually go through there and check what's going on in the area, what do need my pricing to be, this does it all for you. Then all you need to do is manage the key metrics. So that's step number 2 to buying back your time and making this a truly passive business. Number 3, which is buying back your time, and that is hiring staff. I'm going to put it in this. The reason I'm going to put hiring staff is because I've seen a guy talk about this online. You can't scale without systems and people, and it's like a big triangle. There's no point having systems in place if you don't intend to scale or have people, and if you're not scaling, there's no point having people or systems. So again, it depends on how you really want to build your business. If you're wanting to be the version of you who builds a big business, or you want to make a certain amount, ultimately it's going to come to a point where you can't do everything on your own. You can't sit there and answer to every guest message. Let's just say, for example, you had 30 properties. That means there could be 30 check-ins, could be 30 checkouts, could be 30 issues, XYZ. So what I mean by that is, if you're scaling your business and you're really wanting to make this passive, the more you start to grow your business, the more likelihood that stuff does come up and stuff actually goes wrong. Stuff's going wrong for me today, stuff's been going wrong every single day for the past week. That is just part of the business. Unless you've got the right staff in the right pockets, it's going to be really hard to manage this business alone. So if you've only got a couple units and you're thinking, how do I really make this passive? You can have your price labs, you can have your channel manager, you can have your task management system for your basic stuff. Then it's just about, right, you'll be a bit more involved. However, if you do intend to get scale or take on a few units, there's a potential possibility for there to be 30 check-ins in a day, 30 checkouts in a day. There could be 30 maintenance issues that crop up. There could be clients not happy because you've got more staff. There could be finances not being tracked proper. And that's where it comes to hiring staff. You need to understand how this business operates, and you're only going to do that by getting your hands dirty and thinking, how do you want to build this business? So these are the different ways our business is split up and exactly how I would do it if I was starting off again. So I'd hire a guest comms VA. So let's just say, for example, these are the different types of roles in the business that a guest comms VA can cover, and for the price as well. So let's just say, for example, you've got 5 properties. You're now making, let's say, 1k per one, so you're making £5,000 per month. If you're making £5,000 per month and you're not intending to scale beyond that point, but you really want to buy your time back, you need to hire a guest comms VA. So you within your business, you are the money maker. You're the person who needs to be the face of the business. You're the one who needs to do all the marketing, the sales, closing deals, managing clients, all the high value stuff, because you need to get someone to buy back your time in these areas. So what I mean by this is, these will deal with your like Airbnb requests. So it could be all guest messages. They can build out contractors for you. So if let's say you're expanding into a new place, they can build out the contractors, speaking to maintenance, so handymen, electricians, plumbers. These can deal with all tickets. So what I mean by tickets is just any maintenance issues that come up, any pending tasks, any guest complaints. These can chase up reviews. And you might think, well, you can have this in your AI automation for uplisting. I mean, you can, or just your channel manager in general, you can, but it's more personable coming from an actual person, chasing up the day of checkout, the day after that. This is stuff they can do and buy back your time. They can handle and de-escalate all situations. De-escalate and deal with escalations. They can do most things in your business. They can even onboard new properties. Do your guidebooks. They can do anything you want them to do. And this is where you really decide of how passive you want your business. And it's exactly how we made it passive. Is when we started hiring guest comms VAs, this absolutely shifted my mindset of how I operate this business. I was no longer working in the business anymore. I was working on it. And when that mindset completely flipped for me is when I went to Mallorca earlier this year. We was there. It was like, how do we, stuff going wrong in the business, but we're not there. We're not accessible. We can't go to properties. I don't go to any properties anymore. I don't even know what properties is being onboarded. I don't deal with the marketing, or I don't even deal on the onboarding of it. Every time a new unit comes on, once it's in the ecosystem, I'll just double check. I was like, right, here we go. Let's just go and get at it. We build out the new contacts in the new areas and making sure that anything that comes up, we can just resolve the issues as soon as possible. So how you can really make this passive is understanding your roles within the business. So to me, there's 4 main key functions in an Airbnb business or any service-based business. You've got your marketing, your sales, your finance, and your operations. I am not good at operations. I don't know even how to paint a wall proper. I'd mess up. I can't even draw on a whiteboard proper. That's okay. You've got to understand where your skill set lies. Mine was in marketing and sales. So what I done was, as I hired VAs to handle the first guest communication. So any messages that come through, they try and de-escalate the situation, sort it out. I'd only get involved when it was an escalation or it's something they couldn't deal with. Yeah. Sometimes you can sacrifice review score. You can sacrifice not getting the best review, which might hinder some direct bookings coming forward or any repeat bookings. But sometimes you've got to outweigh what the price versus the cost is. In order for you to truly build a passive business, you need to put yourself in the mindset of someone who is actually living in a passive business. You need other people helping you out, do the work for you. And that comes down to hiring your staff. The moment you can see that they can handle all guest messages, they can speak to contractors, build out new contractors for you, raise tickets, handle our tickets, chase up reviews, de-escalate situations, onboard new properties, guidebooks. And what you'll find is, all for the cost of £500 a month. You'll find for the cost of £500 a month, them doing that for you to buy back 4 or 5 hours a day of your time, if not more, to focus on marketing and sales. If you close one more landlord for a management property and that earned you £600, you need to be doing more of these. You need to be doing 10 of these. Or you might think, for 500 quid, I get to buy my time back. Now you've got to decide with how passive you want to make your business, because you can make this passive to an extent. You're always going to have some involvement, but if you really want to get to the point where you don't have to do anything and you can go, I don't know, Bali, Thailand, Dubai, like I said before, you need to start thinking like a proper CEO and think on top of the business. What pockets do you need to fit in? What slots do you need to fill? And start to build it around that and build it around your dream lifestyle. But this is how you can really buy back your time. These can do this. You can focus on onboarding new units and focusing on marketing. But yeah, that's how you can make an Airbnb passive. If you want to see more stuff like this, or me going into detail about certain points, because I'm only conscious I've done a 15-minute video here, is we can do that around specific topics and I can dig deeper, because I could do an hour to 2 hours video on going into diving deeper into a guest comms VA / a maintenance VA / a finance person. These are all stuff I can go into depth on topics about. So if that's something you're interested in, wanting to know a bit more about, then yeah, feel free to drop it in the comments below and we can get working on it.